Kravitz. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good evening and welcome to episode 285 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your very proud host, Howard Kravitz. Thank you for joining us on a very, very special night with two fantastic guests, trainer Jena Antonucci and NYRA analyst Richard Migliore. It's an Italian fest here on the show tonight. We are so excited to talk about the Travers Stakes. It is Travers week. What an incredible week at Saratoga. Please make sure you subscribe on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. After you do that, hit the notification bell so that you know when new content will arrive, and smash that like button. You can follow me on Twitter at HKravitz. You can see my name tag there, and scrolling at the bottom of the screen, of course, email hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. We have fantastic power picks tip sheet. Look below the video player. Most of you have that information, although we're expecting a lot of new viewers tonight. Look below the video player for information about our tip sheet. We also have a special Saratoga only Power Picks tip sheet, which is on sale now through our website, hhhracingpodcast.com. Please make sure you check that out. In order to have the best show possible tonight, we would love to have a very active and live chat. We already have many people in the chat right now. Please be prepared to ask questions for Jena Antonucci and Richard Migliore. Jenna will be on the first 25 minutes until approximately 8 p.m. Eastern, and then we'll bring on Richard Migliore, who's already excited to be here as he's in the bullpen waiting there, ready to come in already. But we're going to bring in Richard Migliore there. He can hear me, which is fantastic. He's all set to go. We'll bring him in at around 8 p.m. But we have Michael Osen is here. It's Italian night. Katie is here already. A lot of people already in the chat. Please make sure you comment. Before we bring on Jenna, very quickly, let's bring on my co-host for this evening from the Saratoga Special and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Mr. Paul Halloran. Paul, big night tonight. How you doing?
Yes, Massachusetts for now. We'll be heading west Thursday morning, I'm happy to say.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Paul will be up in Saratoga Springs for the Travers. They just had the draw. We'll talk about the Travers in a little bit with Jenna. The draw was at 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. Arcangelo gets the 2-hole. I would assume Jenna's going to be pretty happy with that 5-2 morning line. We'll be talking to her. Paul, anything else we want to discuss? Or let's just jump right in.
No, I think we got the Belmont Stakes winning trainer on hold here. Let's get her in here.
All right, let's not put her on hold anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, I had the pleasure of meeting Jenna Antonucci, the Belmont winning trainer, the first female trainer to win a Triple Crown race. And coincidentally, we actually bumped into, myself and Matt Miller, Paul, we actually met her like 3 nights in a row. Completely out of coincidence. It was sort of a running joke for us the first few days of our trip because we saw her once, we introduced ourselves, and then coincidentally, she was sitting right next to us at breakfast, completely unplanned. The next morning, we saw her at Jockey Karaoke. We just, we wanted to make sure that we were not stalking her at all. It was sort of a pretty funny situation. But
she could get Tapper Trice's lawyer to get that restraining order.
Yeah, right, exactly. The Tapper Trice. Well, I'll tell you what, that's another horse that Jenna's going to have to deal with on Saturday with Arcangelo. But I think she's pretty comfortable. So anyway, Jenna was extremely nice and generous to come on tonight. So let's bring on right now the Belmont winning trainer and trainer of Arcangelo, one of the second morning line favorite in this year's Travers Stakes. Let's bring on right now Jena Antonucci. Great. Thanks again so much for coming on tonight. Jenna, we have a short time ahead and take off the banner that's scrolling. You're going to see questions at the bottom of the screen, Jenna. We'll also read them off. And Paul, we're also going to do a mini version of our 10 minutes of post. I decided to split it up, Jenna, Paul. We're going to do 5 questions for Jenna and 5 questions for Richard Migliore. So we have a fun little segment, Jenna, at the end. That's sort of rapid fire kind of thing. I think you'll enjoy it. Paul, I'm going to let you start first as the official professional journalist of the show, and we'll get started with Jenna.
Well, Jenna, thanks again. As Howard said, we had a chance to talk a little bit yesterday on the NTRA conference call, and now that the draw, I know that's one last hurdle. You still got about 72 hours or whatever to get him to the gate. But just tell our folks how everything has gone. You opted to train him up to this race. How everything has gone in Saratoga, and how you're feeling, whatever we are, 72, 96 hours out.
We're pretty pleased. He has really relished in being back this summer as he did last summer, and is really just continuing to mature and get stronger and put more body on, and just do everything that you would ask a young 3-year-old to do. So we're pleased. No doubts or questions of not doing a prep in between. He's just thrived with having the space and being able to just grow up.
And the draw, I know, 1.25 miles with the long run. It does, especially in a relatively small field. But did you have any preference going in?
I mean, I think in any draw, no matter how big or small the field, you don't want to be stuck on either corner. So, not having to deal with 1 or 7, is, I think, ideal for anybody. So, completely fine with where we are. And I think it's going to be an excellent race.
Jen, I know you spoke again in the teleconference, but most people obviously in the public couldn't hear. Can you talk about your decision to give Arcangelo a little bit of time after the Belmont and chose not to run, for example, in the Jim Dandy or the Haskell? And as you mentioned, let him grow up a little bit and be well rested for the Travers.
Yeah, he has most of his races quite spaced through developing him. And so their closest racing being from the Peter Pan to the Belmont. And so it wasn't a hard conversation. John and I talked about it some, and there wasn't a worry as far as fitness, and being able to keep him at the level for this race. So it really honestly wasn't a very hard decision. I think sometimes the prep races can get a little trappy on you if you're not careful, and there wasn't a whole lot to gain. We really are hopeful to have a really nice 4-year-old year with him, and so just being mindful and responsible in how we continue to grow him and mature him and let him have successful experiences under his belt.
We have a comment from Katie, one of our great viewers below, said, Jenna's a nice person. Oh, she's likely to have a great horse like Arcangelo. So a lot of people rooting for you as well. And I just wanted to say, I think it's very important for all of our viewers to hear this, Jenna. And I talked to you about it briefly. Myself, Paul Halloran, the other co-hosts, everyone on the show, when I started the show 2.5 years ago, I really wanted to make sure to spread this game to as many people as possible. And we are huge supporters of women in horse racing. I just want to rattle off a few people we've had on the show, and this is not everyone. Michelle Yu, Jessica Paquette, Sarah Al-Badwi on the TV side, Acacia Clement, Kim Weir, we're a big supporter of the TRF, Nancy LaSala, who used to recently from the PDJF, and we've also had trainer Kelsey Danner, who is an excellent, underrated trainer, does not get nearly the respect she does. Jenna, how comfortable you are sort of being the face right now of the female horsemen in horse racing?
Yeah, that's been a role we've had to kind of, put our arms around kind of quickly on. And, we do us, and I kind of just do me. And it's like I've said often, we're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's fine. But we're going to come at it pretty straight and direct and, let people know where we stand on things and be respectful in the process. And
just to follow up on that before we get back to Arcangelo, you mentioned, of course, one of the more famous quotes after your Belmont interview. And no, we're not gonna show your reaction to the Belmont. I'm sure you've seen that 10,000 times. Well, it was amazing, but we'll spare you that. You mentioned having a seat at the table. Can you just reiterate what that meant for people that maybe didn't hear that quote from yourself?
There's a lot of adversity in anything you choose to do, and when you want to do your profession at an exceptional level, and you're going to meet a lot of no's along your journey, and people that may not be ready to have you in their sphere and in their circle while they're doing their life. And so for me, it was a culmination of a lot of no's throughout the years, and being super careful not to let those no's define who you are and where you're going with your career and what you're hoping to do. And so it was just building our business from the ground up, with what we do in Ocala and then what we do in the racing side, and building it and believing in your team and pulling those seats up around you that are going to move the needle the direction you're trying to do, putting the horse first and putting owners' interests first and not trainers' interests first. And so that's where the quote came from of just, if you can't find a seat at the table, make your own table. Is you can't be afraid to work hard for it and dig for it. And in doing so, good things will come when you work with good people.
Yeah, it reminds me of what Michelle, you said. Paul, I'll let you answer the next question. Michelle said, doesn't really matter if you're male, female, whatever. If you can train, you can train. If you can be a TV analyst, you can be a TV analyst. And sometimes that's completely, overblown and overlooked, and it's just silly. Tom Espinoza at the bottom of the screen, Jenna, is one of our great viewers from San Francisco. Said, congrats on the Belmont win. I love the genuine emotion reaction, curse words included. Yeah. Made it even better, Jenna. I think a lot of people really appreciated that visceral response from you. So you might regret it. I don't know, but I don't know if you do or not. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but everyone loved that, to be honest.
I did a lot of filtering in that time after the race. So the fact that I think 2 got out, I was did well.
We'll get back to Ocala also. Paul, go ahead.
Jen, it's been talked about on how you just did, the fact that a woman won the Belmont Stakes. But I really think the bigger story, in my opinion, is a trainer with the stock that you have, the numbers that you have, if you will, not one of the quote unquote big name trainers. I just think it reinforces the notion of you give a good trainer a good horse. Or a great horse, perhaps in this case. And I happen to be pretty good friends with Buff Bradley, who was a trainer who had probably had similar numbers to you in Kentucky for a while, and he wins the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. And he gets a horse like Groupie Doll. He gets a horse like Brass Hat, and he goes to Dubai and runs second and got the second place purse stolen from him. But that's another story for another day. But if I were, in my mind, the lead to that story is I just think it really was a victory for so many. I'm out there on the backstretch. We know that there are big names out there and they do a great job, but we know there are dozens and dozens and dozens of others. And I just thought it was the real story there was, I would think any one of those men or women would have had to be really pleased that you were able to do what you did.
I appreciate that. And I think that's a lot of the probably the biggest surprise through this journey has been an industry where trainers and horsemen can be quite fractured. It has been overwhelmingly supportive and positive, and I'm grateful for that. And there's plenty of naysayers in the game, and I think if this can show one agent and one owner that a smaller middle-sized barn can do some really great work, and how much one of those kind of horses means to those programs, you might have different results, or horses that are running a little bit longer. And so it's just people being brave to step outside the status quo and lead with their convictions a little bit and believe in the horse and the teams that they're trying to work with.
And Jenna, as of course you know this, but Paul, as a relatively new owner, Jenna, I'm a pretty new owner. I've been involved in the game through the podcast and as a fan and handicapper for 35 years. But I just started getting into some shares of owning some horses through a Delphi Racing Club and trainer Rehan and Christophe Clement. And I have a great appreciation of the economic side of horse racing. Arcangelo, Paul and Jenna, of course, Jenna knows, $35,000, absolutely bargain buy at the 21 Keelan September yearling sale. Can you talk a little bit about that process, Jenna, when you first purchased the horse or got the horse to your barn?
Yeah, I can't claim any of that credit. That all goes to John. He found the horse, and if there's believe in bigger things and divine things, the horse may have picked him. And so we had met him actually literally not long after he had seen the horse for the first time, and just through some sarcasm, shockingly, is how I started chit-chatting with, he was my business partner. And he initially got his training with Clovis Crane, and then came to us in January-ish, and we kind of started over with him. He was a very rambunctious, unfocused juvenile, and so just John always wanted to take his time. And I don't think John even realized how much racing I had done at the time when he first came to us. It was going to be more for breaking and training purposes. And it just evolved. The relationship evolved. He had been through, bigger barns and smaller barns at the racetrack, and we were just a good fit for him. And so I'm thankful that, whoever's up above put it all together.
A comment from Maiden Focus: no one could have done a better job with Arcangelo than Jenna. Obviously, he's flourished under her care. That's from Maiden Focus. So nice comment. We see the Equibase there on the screen. I'm just going to go full screen, Jenna. Arcangelo, of course, is by Arrogant out of a Tappet mare modeling, who I think was unraced. Arcangelo is not the biggest horse. I mean, Arrogant was a pretty big horse, and Tappet, of course, I'm not sure how many hands he was, but he's a big horse. But Arcangelo obviously is very athletic, but he's more of a medium build, would you say? Is that correct?
He's actually bigger than you would think. He's actually over 17 too.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But very leggy horse. And so it can be deceiving. I think that's one of his great benefits is that he's not a big, heavy bodied horse. That he is a little bit more leggy than say Arrogate was, but probably has a little bit more Tappet look to him in that regard.
And at what point, Jenna, you see his sort of page on the screen there, broke his maiden. It took him 3 starts to break his maiden and broke his maiden in March. At what point did you think that we might have something very special here?
I think where you're always careful is, you being around horses long enough, you worry about the morning glory. And so we had been playing with this horse at the racetrack. We had him at the farm and watched that progress, and then sending him to Saratoga last summer and watching that progress and just trying to space everything out as much as we could to buy him as much time as possible. Basically, when he started getting too fresh, we would breeze him. So if I could buy 2 weeks, I bought 2 weeks. Excuse me. If I could buy 3 weeks, I'd buy 3 weeks. And the speed was always there. And so it was really just trying to keep a lid on that as much as we could, because there was no reason in going fast that soon. But watching how he broke his maiden was probably the biggest eye opener. There was a lot of challenges to the speed figures and such that he threw up from that race, if it was an anomaly, if it was a mistake, et cetera, et cetera. But that quality of that maiden race and how he did it, I think was the eye opener for everybody.
And he's also quite playful. You've shared a few things on Twitter. Let me share this with people. And again, not everyone probably saw some of the things on Twitter. Can you describe everyone what we're seeing here and when this happened? He's just sort of hanging out, having a little fun in his pen there.
Honestly, like a daily thing for us. Yeah, he was. He was that day. He was extra fresh. That was after his day off, and we just went and jogged a 1.8 miles with him, and he wasn't impressed with our light work schedule for the day. So, love seeing him clear out his hind end like that. And, it's a good thing. And he gets to go in his round pen every day, twice a day.
Yeah. I mean, these are just like big kids, right? They're playful. They like to have fun. His mannerism seems very good. He seems to be well within himself. He's very controlled with his aggression. Jen, he seems very mature, which is extremely important, especially Saturday when there's going to be Paul, 60,000 or whatever at the track there. Right, Jenna?
Yeah, and that's the biggest growth we've seen in him, and giving him the space and the time is just, he's become so much more focused, and which is also why we're really careful to make sure he has the time that he needs to be a kid and go play in the round pen and do things that he needs to do to be able to be so composed now when he's, in work mode.
Paul?
Well, Jenna, we don't have time to go through your whole life story, but I think it is noteworthy that you've really experienced, you grew up around horses. I think I read you were riding when you were 3 and maybe being part of a horse show when you were 4. They've done some work on the veterinary side. You have a farm that breaks horses, rehab, et cetera. So you really come at this, with a well-rounded, it just seems like you've experienced the business from all sides, which I have to think is a big advantage.
I probably have a very measured opinion about a lot of things, just the realities of, what everything means to the other pieces. And so I'm super grateful to have the foundation that I do. And I'm honestly grateful that I didn't come into racing until, I was in my 30s, because it allowed me, sorry, some of the background noise, it allowed me to have, just a different point of view and having the experience of watching different programs and horses being developed and, the reproductive side, the sales side. So yes, I think it definitely offers a different point of view.
Well, and Jenna, if you'd like to briefly talk about horseology, I know that's something that near and dear to your heart. I have the website here for people who are not familiar. Jenna, talk a little bit about horseology.
Well, this is, part of the seat at the table, that I was referring to, where Katie and I have, wealth of knowledge and experience throughout the industry, and just found that the industry can be quite fractured at times, where horses have to go here for this and there for that. And we took all of our experiences and put them under one umbrella, where we can offer these services to our clients from basically conception to retirement. And so, we actually do a lot of layups and rehabs for other trainers, and send horses back out and, develop young horses for other trainers. And so that's a lot of fun to be able to cheer and root and have that camaraderie with other fellow trainers in the industry.
Paul, before we get to our 5 questions to end the show, let's ask Jenna specifically about Saturday. You have the 2-hole. We talked a little bit already. You have Forte just to your inside. I don't know how you feel as a handicapper. I feel like Arcangelo could show more speed than Forte in general. I know you're going to say you're going to let Javier just break and see what happens, but we don't want to. I know you don't want to give out your specific plan on the show, but in general, where would you like to see Arcangelo in the first quarter of the race on Saturday?
I think all that'll happen, organically, and you can make a plan the best that you want. But we all know once those gates open, it's out of our hands completely, not to be.
Of course.
So, obviously, National Treasure's been on the front end of things. Mott, I'm not sure what he'll do now with Scotland since they're in the 7. He's going to have some get up and go to be able to clear. So, I think we'll end up likely following a lot, behind a National Treasure type of thing, and be mindful of the pace. We're very blessed to be able to be on it or be off of it, and Arcangelo can handle those different scenarios pretty well. He's shown it to us 3 different ways now, so we'll have to lean into Javier through those decisions in real time going around that racetrack.
And who better to lean into in the Travers, Jenna, than Javier Castellano? In this particular year, you talked about things happening for a reason. The whole jockey situation kind of happened organically, where the Mage folks ultimately made the decision for Javier. But and I know you were, you seemed very measured, and what was going to happen was going to happen. But I would think you'd have to be very happy to keep him, not only because of the year he's having, the success he's had in this race. I believe he's going for number 7. He's just really having a terrific year that the Belmont was a key part of, as was the Derby. And I would think having him in the irons is going to make you feel pretty good.
I think, Javier's really focused right now and is in a really good groove. Is feeling races very well. And I think in these kind of races where you've got a lot of time to think out there, mile and a quarter, there's a lot of time going around that racetrack. So having somebody that has that level of focus, that's been breezing this horse, racing this horse, they're 3 for 3 together. He's learned how dynamic the horse is, and them having so much confidence in each other, I think is absolutely invaluable.
It's fantastic, Jen. I think it's a great post. And this has absolutely, my next comment has nothing to do with you being on the show, but your horse is my top pick. I love Arcangelo. I think from a handicapping standpoint, Paul, when I look at the race, and Jenna, we're going to talk about this later on our show all week long, you want horses that have upside. And I think Arcangelo, I'm assuming Jenna would agree, has as much, if not more upside than anyone in this field, because he's a little more lightly raced. And, he could certainly improve many points. Not that he really needs to, Paul, but Jenna, I'm sure you feel like his best races are yet to come.
We do. And that's why we've been, responsible in how we've developed him, and being patient to let him come together on his schedule, and backing into races that we feel is the right way to let him find his best way. Let's
do our quick 5 minutes of post, Paul, if that's all right. So These are going to be 5. Well, let me bring on the screen, Jenna. Here we goes, our famous 10 minutes to post. 10 minutes to post, and Richard Migliore will be a part of this in a little bit here, but we're just going to ask you 5. These are rapid fire questions, Jenna, to end your time here. We greatly appreciate you can answer them in 5 seconds, take 1 minute, whatever you'd like. She has no idea what they're going to be. Are you ready for our 10 minutes to post segment, Jenna?
I'm ready, even with the motorcycles going by.
All right, here we go. Paul, you have the first question actually on the screen.
I do.
Yes, you do.
The first moment you fell in love with horse racing, Jenna?
Oh, goodness. I fell in love with a horse. Ooh, that was loud. I fell in love with a horse more than horse racing. Breaking and developing young horses is when I fell in love with horse racing and learning how much even more dynamic the thoroughbreds were and starting them as youngsters.
Jenna, do you have a bucket list track or race day event you'd like to attend anywhere in the world?
No, I've been really, really blessed to go to
Wow.
and see so many things and able to go to Japan and see racing there. And, I just, every opportunity is amazing, but I don't have the, oh my God, I have to go see this one thing.
Wow, Paul, that's a first on our show. How cool is that? That someone has just fulfilled, Paul, every bucket list item that she has in horse racing in terms of.
Really open-minded, so it's I don't like to limit myself with I only want to do this or I only want to do that. So
sure,
every opportunity is amazing.
Well, the Travers on Saturday can be a good start, Jenna. On your
Paul, next question.
This is a good one. The most exciting race you have witnessed in person.
Now I have. There's a caveat. You know the caveat, Jenna. We have to disclude the Belmont because we know that'd be the obvious choice. So other than the Belmont Stakes, sorry, Jenna.
That's a ball there. Zenyatta and Blame.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yes, I actually needed Blame, so I was happy about that. But
ironically, now we invest in a lot of Blames. I think they're phenomenal racehorses, probably super rated sire commercially. But I had such a to not like him for the longest time for beating Zenyatta that day.
Wow.
I have peace with it.
Very good. And Garrett Gomez, what an incredible ride. God rest his soul on Blame. Here's a next question, Jenna, and I was there for this. What's more challenging, preparing Arcangelo for the Travers or judging jockey karaoke? I thought you did a great job with the PDJF event.
I'm going to go with option B there because you have to feelings. So we'll go with it was more difficult on the karaoke.
You enjoyed that event, right? That was sort of something fun, a little break from the norm, right?
Yeah, it was a good time. Good call.
Last question for Jenna, then we'll bring on Richard with Jenna for a minute, and then we'll have Richard on the show as Richard's waiting in the background. Last question, Paul.
Any goals you have yet to accomplish as a trainer, Jenna, now that the Belmont has been knocked off?
Very atypical answer for goals. I do not believe in setting hard goals. I can find that goals can be limiting for people. And so my goal is to live the best possible way that I can and, doing right by the people that are around me and treating people as well as we can. And the goals will happen when you treat people the right way and those around you the right way and keep putting horses first. So I have a very unorthodox view on goals.
I think that's a great answer. Jenna, before I let you go, I would be remiss if I did not let wonderful NYRA analyst and former jockey Richard Migliore come on the show and say hello and perhaps ask a question or just wish you good luck. So let's bring on, ladies and gentlemen, from NYRA, Mr. Richard Migliore. Richard, how you doing tonight?
Good evening, guys. And Jenna, great job with your horse. I loved his easy maintenance move into the race. I like when the hard lifting or heavy lifting's done, the hard work's done, and then you cruise on in. And he looks sensational. I've seen him a great deal in the mornings out there, and I think he looks phenomenal. So I just want to wish you the best of luck.
I really appreciate it.
We're all very excited for you. Jenna Antonucci, thank you very much. We know it's an extremely busy week. We wish you all the luck and success in the future, especially on Saturday with Arcangelo. Thank you very much for coming on the HHH Racing Podcast. We'd love to have you on again if you have time. Thank you very much.
Have a great night.
Thanks, Jenna.
Thanks, Jenna. Take care. All right, there we go, Richard. Jena Antonucci has done an unbelievable job with Arcangelo. I know you'll be talking about that horse quite a bit on your broadcast this week. Richard, how you doing, sir? Good to see you again.
Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me on. A little late for me. My bedtime's around 9, but we'll get in under the wire. It's good.
Oh yeah, well, yeah.
That's
Richard, I'm old, Richie. So I'm with you, buddy.
That's why we started a little bit earlier. Let me show you something very quick. Last time I saw Richie in person, and I'm assuming he's going to remember this, although he meets a lot of people. It's on the screen there, Richard. Myself, many other people. Paul, this is the group that Richard took us on tour with the TRF from left to right. Brad Anderson, of course, Kyle Roscoe of the show. There's Richie. There's me, Drew Coatney, Matt Miller, his brother David Miller, Philly Joe Mecca, Patrick Kunzel, of course, co-host of Ben and Boozin, and then Nancy Courtney, wife of Drew. Richard, you enjoy doing these tours in the morning. We really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun. I had a great group. You guys were terrific and so into it. And it's usually the groups that make it or break it. You know, when you get people that are just so into the history of Saratoga and the horses and the place, and you have some really good conversations. And the more that people are that open and into it, the more stories I'm going to tell. They're going to get more out of me. I'm going to say things that maybe later I'll regret saying. It's a story. I like it. Great call. You know, the TRF benefits and anything for the horses. Obviously, everything good in my life is because of horses. So.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to cover many things in the short amount of time we have to. I know it's a busy week for you, and you're going to be getting up early, I'm sure. So we appreciate it, Paul. We're going to talk about a few things, Richard, as I mentioned through an email. We'll talk about just how the meet's going, and then we'll focus on the Travers. But Paul, go ahead. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, well, we just coming off the draw, Richard. So I guess we'll start there. And we said to Jenna, 1.25 miles, long run to the turn, relatively short field, should be okay. But any thoughts you might have since the draw came out and where the key players landed?
I honestly don't really feel like the post positions are going to be a big issue here. You got plenty of run to that first turn. It's not an incredibly large field, although sometimes that lends itself to horses having difficult trips because everybody can key on certain horses. You can't get lost in a smaller 7-horse field. Watching these horses train and everything I've seen this month, I really believe in my heart of hearts it's a 2-horse race. And that would be your 2-year-old champion Forte and Arcangelo. I think they've done better than any of the other horses that I've seen train up here. I think Forte with the blinkers on, they got the desired effect, the horse that then would travel in the bridle. I just think they're coming in the race the right way, and they're obviously 2 of the upper echelon 3-year-olds. You can have a horse come into a race the right way, and they're doing the best they've ever done. But if they don't have the ability to match the horses in the race, they can run 5th and be the race of their life. Well, you've got 2 of the best, arguably the best 2-year-olds. I think they are. 3-year-olds. And at the end of the day on Saturday, I think we will have a leader of this division. I think whoever wins the Travers falls to that of the class.
I think so. We have comments on the bottom of the screen for our great viewers, Richard. Katie, I love seeing you, Mig, on Toga at America's Day at the races. So that's from Katie. We enjoy. And it's funny, Richard, we talked on your tour about how sort of nervous you were at first when you were on HRTV, and just you've come such a long way. I thought the piece you did recently on the 4-Star Dave was just fantastic, and you look like you've been doing this for 20 years, like you were a journalism major, and just it's really impressive, Richie. As someone who is a journalism major and has been on TV a little bit myself, it is not as easy as you and everyone else at Fox makes it look.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. And honestly, I was blessed to get incredible opportunities pretty quickly after my riding career ended. And I was terrible. I did my first thing. I came home. I was like, that'll be that. No one will ever call me again. And, to their credit, they called me back. And the next thing I did was Breeders' Cup. And then it just kept on building from there. So, again, being given great opportunities. And then something happened, too, that really helped me. I started hosting the Dark Day simulcast shows for NYRA on the NYRA network. And we didn't have a very big audience. I mean, if, we had 50, 100 people, maybe a bit more, I don't know, but it was a very small audience. And you're doing 5 hours of live television, with, a little break in between, but you just learn how to think on your feet. And then Mitch Levitas was my director on those shows. And I'd be given the prices for parks. Like, the winner of the parks paid, $660, $440. And he's telling me a dirty joke in my ear at the same time. So it was like broadcaster boot camp. I had to learn to block out what I didn't need and then pick up what I did need. So to a very small but dedicated audience, I thank them. Thank you, because that was really my proving ground.
But people don't understand they have IFBs, which are the little microphones in their ear, and you have to talk as well as listen to people at the same time. It's tricky. Paul, so we sort of digress there. Back after the race, Paul, or go ahead, you can just ask any question you'd like.
Well, I think, we have the advantage of having Richie on, and before he was a great broadcaster, he was a pretty good rider. We heard
Pretty
by
good.
doing a little research. He did
Won a few races.
He did get up top 30,102 times. He put his leg in the irons. At least that's documented by Equibase, Richard. Those are race day only, so we could probably multiply that right by about 10 or 20. But tremendous career, Richie. 4,450 wins, 51st all time. Eclipse Apprentice in 1981. How old were you then, Richie, as the apprentice? 17, 18?
16. I was 16.
Oh,
years
okay.
old.
So you're right. I was graduating high school, so yet another person who's younger than me, but not much. We happen to say. And some of your top horses, Richie, and we'll let you decide who they were. But obviously, at this time of year, we've heard a lot about 4-Star Dave because of the winning 8 years in a row at Saratoga, which is unheard of. But we already did have in the chat. People would like to know, in your mind, and I know it's hard to like your children, but
Sure.
Some of the ones that you remember the most fondly.
Well, obviously Dave would be high on the list, and ability-wise, he had a great deal of ability, but he wouldn't be near the top of the list as far as horse's ability. But intelligence, charisma, consistency, he had all that and more. Hidden Lake, she was a champion older mare. She was a jockey's dream. If they went too fast, she could come from last. They went slow, she could go to the lead. She wasn't afraid of bullying her way through on the inside if she needed to. She was absolutely a jockey's dream. Well, there was so many over the years, and I'm going to leave some out, and then I'll feel bad. But the best horse, ability-wise, I ever sat on, nobody ever heard of. Horse ran once. It was a Rokeby stable horse. He was by Tom Rolfe. He broke his maiden at Belmont, something ridiculous, by 20 some odd lengths, ran 7/8 and 21 and change. If you go to pedigreequery.com and put in that horse, they put footnotes. There's a footnote about that. And then he bowed his tendon subsequent that between that race and his next start in a work. He went to Rokeby Stable and became Mr. Mellon's riding horse for the next how many years, once he healed up from his bowed tendon. That horse was a different world. I was in front in a work, and a horse named Winter's Tale, who won the Suburban and the Brooklyn. This is a horse that never started. He pulled up next to me, and the horse left him. His name was Hijinks. He was like a whole different level, and no one ever got to see his greatness, unfortunately.
That's too bad.
Richie, we got a comment from Jeffrey Wilson, one of our great viewers. Richie was a fierce rider, one of the best ever to do it. We completely agree with that. Let's talk about riding the Travers specifically. Now, Richie, your best finish was third with Eddington in the 2004 Travers, and that was very memorable. If people aren't old enough or don't remember that particular year, that's when Birdstone won. And Richie, every time I see the replay of that race, I am absolutely awestruck on how dark it was. Of course, everyone knows after the race there was, it was a complete deluge, and Mary Lou was in the winner's circle. It was so memorable. But can you just please describe just riding in that race, in that environment, in the gloom and doom of an impending crazy thunderstorm at Saratoga?
Well, it looked like Armageddon. I mean, it
really
got
did.
so dark, so fast. And, I remember I moved up along the inside. I forget who I was following, but, and then I saw Birdstone making his move on the outside. He wasn't that far off the pace that day either. And he was just a tough little horse. You think about his resume. He won the Champagne as a 2-year-old, the Belmont Stakes, and the Travers. I mean, that's quite a resume. I don't think he ever really got the full credit he deserved, because he was like the spoiler first for the Triple Crown with Smarty Jones. And then, I mean, very good horse, not a very big horse. And, those colors of Mary Lou Whitney is always, amazing to see them. And I'm glad John Hendrickson is continuing on with those silks and the Mary Lou Racing Stable.
Was there a fear that the race wouldn't go off on time, Richie? Or what? I mean, what was the dynamic with the thunderstorm coming in? I mean, the technology was still good then, but not as much as now with radar and whatnot. Was there concern that you wouldn't get the race off until after the storm, or did you rush the race, to happen before they got the storm in? What was the dynamic in the paddock and whatnot?
Yeah, I don't think there was ever any thought about postponing or waiting. I think it was more, let's go, let's get this done, and we all,
Yeah.
headed out. And I remember being in the starting gate, and you could see lightning flashing, and it didn't seem that far away, and it felt like it was coming, right at us. So of course you're just hoping, like, kick the gate, let's go. I do remember it was so dark they put the lights on at the finish line, for the photo finish camera. And Eddington was, he hadn't matured enough quite yet then. It was a good third for him. But I was in a fight for third. You want to get third money. And he spotted the lights about 100 yards from the finish, and his ears went up, and he started putting his toes around, slowing down because of the lights. And I really had to get after him to keep him going forward to preserve third. But he, some horses won't notice that kind of stuff, but some horses are very in tune to that, and he literally put the brakes on when he saw those lights. Thankfully, I was able to get him running enough to persevere and get third.
Yeah, you rode the rail most of the race. Did a great job of tipping to the outside of Purge, who you beat, who finished fourth to get up for third. Paul, were you there that day, by the way, at Saratoga?
I was there that day, as a matter of fact. It's one of the many Travers I've been to. And the thing you realize is, as dark as it looks on TV, right, Richie, it's a lot darker in person, because you do have TV lights that are illuminating to some degree. And as Richie said, the finish line was lit up. But I'll tell you, by the time that race was over, it was dark. It wasn't dusk. It was full-blown darkness.
Is that right?
It is
according to
darker,
Matthew, Richie, they canceled the last race after the Travers. Is that right?
Yeah, that was it. We got through that race, and they pulled the plug. And it was and it's interesting. You bring up Purge, who I just edged out for third there. The year before, as a 2-year-old, I rode Purge in his first start. And we go to warm up, and this huge deluge hit. They brought us back to the paddock. They wound up canceling that race. So I never actually rode him in the race, but I warmed up Purge on the racetrack and everything. They brought us back, canceled one race. So Purge, seems like maybe the heavens were purging every time he ran, because the Travers Day, it came down as well. But how's that? You warm a horse up, but you never actually get to ride that horse in a race.
Crazy. Paul?
Well, Richie, another race I saw you ride in person, Richie. You were in the 2007 Massachusetts Handicap at my beloved Suffolk Downs. You were on the favorite, Fairbanks. Talking with Jenna, I had mentioned one of the things I thought was great about her winning the Belmont, even more so than being a female to win it, was, the smaller, quote unquote, smaller trainer. And showing that you give a good trainer a good horse. And, that Mass Cap was won by a guy I became very good friends with, Buff Bradley, who had brass hat in that race, who went on to run second in Dubai. And of course, all he did was win the Philly and Mare Sprint 2 years in a row with Groupie Doll. The second year, one of the great training jobs of all time. I think she came in off one race, like the Presque Isle Downs Masters or something. So I do remember that Mass Cap. I spent a lot of time with Buff's father, Fred, to this day, one of the greatest gentlemen I've ever met in my life. And unfortunately, Richie, you got beat in the favorite that day, but I did have brass hat at 4-1. So it all comes out in the wash.
Yeah, and Brass Hat beat us on the square. I mean, had the trip I wanted.
Good race.
It was a good race. He just was the better horse on the day. The horse I rode, Fairbanks, was an interesting horse. When he was really good, he could beat just about anybody. The day I won the Tokyo City on him at Santa Anita, not many horses would have beat him that day. Then he won the Hawthorne Gold Cup, but it was workmanlike. He got it done. It was much like his Mass Cap effort. It was good, but it wasn't. And then he ran a race, won a stake on him in Saratoga, an overnight stake. I don't remember the name of it. Duke of Magenta, maybe. And that day, he would have been a handful for anybody. So he was kind of an in and outer. He'd give you a good effort, but once in a while, he'd give you an exceptional effort.
Richie, what does it take to win the Travers? Now, the mile and a quarter, a mile and a quarter is a mile and a quarter. But, Paul, we've talked about this. It just feels like the mile and a quarter at Saratoga seems to be more demanding. I know that we've talked about National Treasure, Paul, on this show a little bit, who, Richie, you and Paul and I are very much against in this race on Saturday. But what does it take to win the Travers at Saratoga?
Well, I mean, you have to have a horse that's capable and doing well at the time, and again, going back to the two horses that I think stand out to me are the two that are good horses doing good at the time, Forte and Arcangelo, and having a horse that wants to get the 1.25 miles. You know, this isn't, you know, I think the Derby, sometimes a horse will go a bit further than they should because just the dynamics of that race, and usually they have the track a bit souped up. You're not going to, you know, fudge being a 1.25 mile horse in Saratoga. If you can't get a 1.25 miles, you're going to struggle here. It's a demanding track. Horses have to be very, very fit, and they have to want to stay. And part of a horse staying is not pulling too much. You know, you need a horse that's tractable, a horse that listens to his rider. And both those horses seem very much in that frame, that they wait on their rider to ask them, you know, or direct them what to do.
Richie, there's been some comments in the chat about Mage. Some people wondering, why isn't Richie like Mage? Mage is very talented, obviously won the Derby. Is there something you've seen in the mornings, or is it just a general vibe with Mage that you don't have this one in the top two?
I am a huge Mage fan. He's been a gem of consistency. I think the connections are terrific. They're, you know, doing a wonderful job. I am not enamored with what I've seen from Mage the week leading up to the race. To me, he looks a little lighter. He looks a little drier. He looks a little less enthusiastic. That's to my eye. You know, I didn't watch the horse train, you know, meticulously all the time, but what I had seen previous, this just looks a little different to me. And maybe the Haskell, even though he wasn't geared up or 100%, you know, fit to win that race, instead of maybe making him go forward, maybe it made him regress. And, you know, this is a guess, an educated guess from what I see. That's why I'm looking at the two horses that have stood out in a positive way training, and that's Forte and Arcangelo.
And Richie, full disclosure, a lot of people on this show know that Paul and myself had nice future wagers for the Derby on Tapit Trice. We really liked him in the spring because of his size and whatever. He's getting blinkers on for this race, Paul, and a jockey switch.
Don't do it, Howard. Howard, don't do it. I'm
not going to pick him.
Don't do it.
I'm not picking him on top, but
divorce
Richie,
papers.
at like 10 to 1,
how
how much worse really is he than the other horses in this field? If he can put it together, I don't think he's without a chance at all in this race.
Well, that's the thing, putting it together. I do think ability-wise, you know, he belongs, but he kind of lost me with his effort in the Belmont. I just thought going that distance, watching him train up to that race, and his gallop outs were otherworldly.
Yeah,
that he would place himself better. He wouldn't react as negatively to the kickback because it doesn't come back as hard. The further you go, the slower the pace. And I just couldn't get past that. I do
blinkers, guess on how that might affect him, Richie?
Yeah, listen, I think, you know, he's always a horse that looked like he would need blinkers. I actually like the rider change too. I think Luis Saez is tremendous. He's a great rider. I honestly don't think he ever really fit that horse. Louis a rider that will constantly kind of peck, almost nag a horse, and I don't think that certain horses respond well to that. That being said, it was just not a genuine enough effort for me. His, you know, I'm going elsewhere now. You know, now he'll probably win, but he's had his opportunities to put it together, and he just quite hasn't gotten there. And some horses never do.
Yeah, Tapit and I we're not divorced. We're separated, Richie. Right now, I can't use him, but I just want to ask you what you thought. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I've gotten the annulment. I went through the church. I went through the church and got it. Yeah. Especially those of us who liked Arcangelo in the Belmont and had the exacta with Tapit Trice and watched them get picked up, which we, you know, Forte is good. Don't get me wrong, but when did we think we'd see the day that we got him passed? So, but speaking of jockeys, Richard, you know, they're all great. Obviously, you know, we talked a little bit with Jenna on how that thing played out, and the Mage people kind of made the decision for Javier. But boy, as I said to her, you know, to keep Javier, not only is he having perhaps an eclipse type year, but the success he's had in this race. And, you know, we all know that, you know, Saratoga is Saratoga and quirky things happen, but it's just got to be great for that team to have him again, the combination of the year he's having and his, 6, I believe, Travers wins.
The intimate knowledge of the horse, Arcangelo, having now had the opportunity to ride him, you know, more than a few times and work him, his confidence level, the year he's having, his record, 6 Travers wins. Obviously, he knows his way around Saratoga and the 1.25 mile distance. I'm sure that, for Jenna, the whole team, we got our rider. That's fantastic. Now, you understand the other connections. Hey, we put you on a Derby winner. How come we can't get a commitment here? They're going to hold your feet to the fire. I mean, that's just that's the game, and everybody's trying to do what's in their best interests. And, I'm sure PJ Campo, Javier's agent, wanted to keep both horses as long as possible. Somebody could get a cough or a sniffle or, whatever. So, you understand everybody's reactions to it. I think everybody handled themselves as professionally and gentlemanly as humanly possible in that situation. But having Javier, to me, is a huge edge. I mean, how could you not believe it is, particularly the year he's having, and people are so quick to write jockeys off. He didn't have a good year or two. He was struggling. My personal opinion, it's not a fact, is that he was hurting physically. And when you have to compete every day as a jockey, there's no days off. And if you don't produce, you don't get mounts, and you spiral out of control. When you're dealing with a physical injury and you can't give yourself time to really heal, it plagues you mentally, physically. You get tireder. It's a tough spot to be in. It's not like you're on a team and you've got a team doctor and a team trainer and a manager that you can, hey, listen, this hamstring or whatever it may be, and you have a contract, you're still going to get paid. Jockeys don't have any of that support, and if you don't ride, you don't get paid, and that's a fact. So we've all ridden hurt, tried to ride through things. Heck, I rode a Breeders' Cup race with a broken wrist and fractured ribs and pelvis, worst professional decision I've made in my life. But that speaks to the desire and the hunger. If you don't work, you don't earn.
I think, Richie, wasn't he one of the early guys to get COVID too in 2020? I'm pretty sure he was, and that took a good chunk out of his. That was a bad year for everyone anyway. But I think he was on the shelf probably a little while longer than the average person with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this is a fact of the matter. The older you get, the more you start getting phased out. I felt it throughout my career, and especially coming off of injuries and different things. So Javier was of a certain age when they start looking for the young guns, the next guy. And we have a very, very good crop of young riders. The core of the NYRA jockey colony is fairly young, and they're super talented. But, Jacinto Vasquez, Hall of Fame rider, used to say, ask a question. What's the first thing to go on a jockey? Is it their eyes? Is it their knees? Is it their heart? Well, the answer is your customers. Customers are your first thing to go.
Absolutely. We have one last question, Paul, from the viewers, and then Richard, we're going to end with our five quick questions. Really appreciate you again being on the show. This is from Jim Pilars at the bottom of the screen. Jim is from Buffalo, one of our favorite viewers. Just asking mainly about track bias. How much did you, in your career, did you ride your races according to the supposed track bias that's out there? I know Andy Sterling has strong opinions on track bias and covers it on NYRA every day. He believes very strongly in it. Some people don't believe in it as much. No better person to ask than you. Track bias, how much does it affect a race, and how much did you take that into account in your career?
Well, I think it's something you have to pay attention to as a rider. Obviously, as a player, you see things shaping up a certain way. I don't think you get as many biased racetracks as you used to. I just think the maintenance of racetracks, the technology therein has gotten so much better that it hasn't played as much of a factor. But you're going to get situations, and you have to be on top of it. When I first started riding, the guy that I followed, because I knew he was really on top of track bias, was George Velasquez. Wherever Georgie went early in a card, you knew that was the place to go. I don't know if he had a pipeline to the track superintendent but he really had a big handle on it. And I learned from him, the value of getting in a tire track where the tractors pull on a muddy day. Yep. Hit one of them tire tracks, you're running over the top of the ground. You're giving yourself an edge. So there were people that as a kid you would follow and pay attention. And then as I got older, I really paid attention to it. Not a lot separates a lot of horses in races. And if you are not doing your homework as a rider, somebody else is, and they're going to exploit something or take advantage of something you're not, and you get beat a head, a neck, a nose, a half a length, there it is right there. If you're going to compete at this level, you have to prepare at least as well as the next guy, and you should try to prepare better.
Interesting. So I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions, Richie, or Paul and I, to end the show. This is part of our famous 10 minutes of post segment. Richie has no idea what questions they are. You can take 10 seconds or a minute, whatever you like, Richie, and then we'll say goodbye for the evening. Are you ready?
You get me
10
nervous,
minutes of post?
but okay, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Let's go. You were getting me nervous, but go ahead.
No, you're all good. You'll like these questions, trust me. I'll start first, Paul. Here we go. Tough question, but a highlight of the Saratoga meet thus far was at Forte in the Jim Dandy. We've seen Elite Power win. There's an incredible amount of great horses coming up this weekend. But before this weekend, is there anything that really sticks out in your mind?
Gosh, that's such a hard question. I'm trying to, you know what? For me, Saratoga is always about 2-year-olds, and I've seen a couple of sensational 2-year-old performances. So I just think the 2-year-old racing in general has been very strong. I think this is a year, if you save your programs, you're going to go back and look and say, wow, that horse wound up winning the Derby, and that horse won a Breeders' Cup. Oh, that horse wound up, turf champion as a 4-year-old. Yeah, I think the quality of the 2-year-olds this year has been outstanding.
Yeah, Paul, Ways and Means. I cannot wait for that horse to run back
Ways
again. What a complete freak. And I got a little tip on the Clement winner a few weeks ago, the 7-furlong horse. I can't remember the name. That
Determinedly.
That horse. I don't know if he's precocious enough, to win maybe the Breeders' Cup this year, but next year, look out. I think that might be their Derby horse, Richie, for the Clements.
Howard, let me just very quickly say this. He is training with another Clement 2-year-old that they are extremely high on. I was out one of the mornings, I was out with the Dormans watching Cody's Wish train. I had a chat with Clement's exercise rider on the horse he was on, and we just started talking, and he said he was a really good 2-year-old. So, of course, I asked the name, and it's Apollo 10, who he said he's not ready yet. He needs more work, but they are very, very high on Apollo 10, who may be blasting off next weekend or back downstate at Aqueduct. So there.
Okay, Apollo 10, Richie. There you go. Keep that one in mind. You got the next question here, Paul.
Ooh, I guess we'll rule out the first day, Richie, because you've already talked about how great you did on your inaugural. But the most nervous you've been on the air?
I don't really get nervous about it. I get more nervous doing scripted stand-up stuff. I so much better like live and just reacting to things and reacting to the host. And I will say, and I don't want to go into specifics or details, when we've had unfortunate incidents in races and having to check my own emotions, because I get very emotional myself, more so now that I'm not a rider. I think, when you're a rider, you almost just have to steel up and you're always going forward. But that's when it's really hard for me, because I can't allow my own emotion to be the story or part of the story. And I've got to try to explain something in a way that not only makes sense, but it is reality, even, through something that's, horrible, for all of us. I'm not that callous, and 99.9% of the people in the industry are not that callous. So, those are the times when I get nervous, because now I've got to present in a way that I eliminate my emotion and at the same time try to educate and make people, understand what took place.
Sure. We have three more questions here. I've got the next one. The newest food dish of which you're most proud that you've cooked, Richie. If you don't follow Richie on Twitter, and you can throw out your Twitter handle for everyone also, Richie, this guy can absolutely flat out cook. Wayne Catalano. I want to see a cook-off with you and Wayne Catalano, Richie.
Honestly, we cook like 2 different styles. I think if we cook together, that would be a lot of fun. I wouldn't want to make it a competition. We way different styles. One
you got
dish
something new that you've developed that you enjoyed making?
It's just a really fresh, summery pasta salad or pasta dish. Because we have a garden and stuff, fresh tomatoes, good tomatoes, ripe, on a baking sheet, olive oil, salt and pepper, little bit of tomato paste on each tomato, sweet onions sliced, olive oil, salt and pepper, roast it all in the oven, dice up a nice eggplant with olive oil, salt, pepper, and roast up the diced eggplant. Get your rotelli pasta going. Rough chop your tomatoes, your onions, incorporate all that together. Fresh basil shredded in there, and good Reggiano Parmesan cheese, and that's as good a pasta dish as you're ever going to have, and you can get it right out of your garden.
Oh, Richie, you're killing me. I haven't even eaten dinner yet. That sounds that sounds great. Paul, you've got the second to last question of the night.
Finish the sentence. In 5 years, I hope to be
living on an island in the Caribbean. No.
Wait a minute. We want you at Saratoga, Richie. Come on now.
I hope to be in Saratoga in the summers and back to Belmont Park for sure. That might be the number one answer right there.
Yeah.
Back at Belmont Park.
Yeah, what's going to happen, you think, with the Belmont next year, Richie? What's your guess?
I mean, I know that there's a big push to run the Belmont in Saratoga. I mean, I don't know logistically how, that'll work out. They have run the Belmont at Aqueduct in the past, and obviously everything will be in place as far as vendors and people to work the event. We're up here, I'm sure you're going to have to ship people up and also hire people for the day. So, I'm sure there's issues. It would be kind of cool to have a Belmont in Saratoga, though. I mean, I would get a kick out of that for sure. Now, you guys may know, I mean, I have a cottage at Belmont that I stay in when I'm doing shows down there, even when we're at Aqueduct. So, when we're at Belmont actually racing, I get the biggest kick out of walking from my cottage to the set, doing my job, work a little bit in my office, walk back to my cottage, go have, dinner across the street at the deli with some of the grooms I'm friends with. I'm a racetracker at heart, so I love that.
We're going to end with a question actually from a viewer because, Paul, one of the questions we already talked about his favorite horse. I think this is a great way to end it, Paul, because you have such a special family, Richie. So, Paul, well, there's really not much to you can see on the bottom of the screen. Fantastic granddaughter. I've met your son, Joe, many times through Adelphi Racing. He's a great guy, does an unbelievable job. Just talk a little bit on the show about how special your family is, and of course your granddaughter, who you very much like to show on Twitter, and rightly so. We all get it.
It's unbelievable. If I'd have known being a grandfather was going to be this fantastic, I'd have been after my son a long time ago. Hurry up, let's go. Now listen, family's everything, and my family has been incredibly supportive, throughout my whole life. My wife and I got married 37 years ago as kids. She knew me when I was living in a tack room before I ever rode races, making $90 a week at Belmont. And then, to have the children we're blessed to have, and now obviously extension of, children getting married. So extended families and the granddaughter, this is what makes everything worthwhile. Why work hard and why do things if you're not doing for your family? And I'm incredibly blessed.
Well, we are blessed to have you on the show, Richie. Paul, any final thoughts as we let Richie go for the night?
No, Richie, I just look forward to heading up Thursday, and I'll thank you in person for this. And I every year when I walk in on Travers Day, like other days too, but I just take a look around and say there is no place in the world, literally, I would rather be, and that goes for. It's not just Travers Day; it's Belmont Day. But Travers Day at Saratoga. I got to tell you, and I went to the Derby for the first time this year. But I don't know if I had to pick one race throughout the year to go to, it would always be the Travers. So we'll look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, I can't wait. Listen, Saratoga, we got the greatest fans, the greatest atmosphere. It's the whole package. I'm with you. It's a very special day to be there on Travers Day.
Well, Richie, it's been a long time. We wanted to get you on the show. We really do appreciate it, especially with your busy schedule. I've had the pleasure to meet you now several times, and I will not be there at the Travers. I'm in Chicago here, and I've got teaching and other things to do, but I look forward to seeing you again, either at Belmont or Saratoga down the road. Much success and love from everyone here at the HHH Racing Podcast. Richie, have a great broadcast, and good luck on Saturday. Thanks again, Richie.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks,
Take
Richie.
care. Have a great
Thank
night.
you.
Bye-bye. All right, Paul. Unbelievable. Let me go ahead and bring up the banner as we wrap up the show. Jena Antonucci, Richard Migliore, two class all the way. We helped people out with some intel for the Travers this weekend. Really appreciate your insight, Paul. You want to get track information on many sides, backstretch, front stretch, etc. Richie and Jenna are the people to talk to.
Yeah, I thought the Mage stuff was notable.
Yes.
You know, and he's out there, and you know, he's got a good eye, and it actually helped me because I was down to 2 horses to win the race, and now I'm down to 1. So that was very helpful. I am, you know, we'll talk about it Thursday. He can beat me. He's a very, very good horse. I am not on Forte in this race, so. If Forte wins, I'm going to lose. That's all there is to it.
For everyone knows, you can look at the bottom of the screen. There's the shows right there at the bottom of the screen. We've got tomorrow night, Bennett and Boozin. They're going to be covering the Friday late pick 5 with the incredible rematch in the personal ensign of Nest and Clairiere. Don't forget about Idiomatic on the rail, Paul. A very fast filly for Brad Cox. So that's going to be a great race. And then Thursday night, we have our flagship show with, of course, myself, you, and Pete to talk about the incredible. I mean, there are so many good races Saturday. It's like a mini Breeders' Cup. It's absolutely insane. And then, of course, we have Saratoga today in the mornings. Early start time. Check your local listings. Early start time Saturday morning. It's going to be at 10 a.m., half an hour earlier. They're going to start the card earlier. So 10 a.m., Eastern time Saturday morning for Saratoga today. And then let's not give the New York bred short shrift, Paul. A real nice card on Sunday. Why don't you mention that? New York Showcase Day. We'll have Saratoga today starting our regular time at 10:30 Eastern on Sunday.
Yeah, they moved it. New York Showcase Day has been on Friday for the last several years. They moved the personal ensign back to Friday, which I love, you know, to put a real feature on Friday, and they give the New York breds their due on Sunday. And Sunday's going to be a very special day, Howard. They're going to bury the remains of Funny Side inside one of the gates at Saratoga at 11 a.m. on Sunday, and I plan to be there for that. I will be there staying over to cover the New York bred races for both the special and the website. And one of our astute commenters put up Apollo 10 is in this Friday, Howard.
Ooh.
So
there's going to be a little steam on that horse, I am guessing. Paul, let's just hope the rain stays away as much as possible.
Don't go, please. Here we go.
No. As you said, what's your favorite line? What is it? A rainy day at the track is better. What's the line, Paul?
Yeah, a rainy day at the track is better than a sunny day anywhere else. But I'll tell you, we've had enough of them this year. This will be the 3rd or 4th consecutive week I've done the Friday Saratoga power plays. And the 3rd or 4th consecutive week, I got to try to figure out if they're running on turf or not. We got lucky last week. I think we guessed exactly right last week, except for the stakes. The week before, we guessed exactly right, everything but the stakes. So I am probably not going to do those picks till tomorrow night, but I have to do them tomorrow night because I got to get on the road Thursday and get up there.
Well, I wouldn't. Excuse me. A little rain is better that we're getting the next 2 days, Paul. Highs of 98 and 99 with heat indices in the Chicago area of 115. It is going to be a little steamy the next 2 days. But I'll tell you what's hot. The racing action is hot. The HHH Racing Podcast is hot. Please tell everyone about this show. If you're listening or watching, they can watch as a replay. For my good friend and co-host Paul Hallen, Jena Antonucci, and Richard Migliore, this has been your host, Howard Kravitz, episode 285 of the HHH Racing Podcast. Crush your bets, even though we didn't handicap tonight. Crush your bets all week long at Saratoga and stay right here for incredible coverage of Travers Stakes week. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
happens. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.